Hey everybody, Professor Snart checking in. So we have just finished up our last unit, which is Unit 4, and now we move into one of those units that is, like I'd mentioned in an announcement a while back, one of the kind of anchor units or anchor activities for our course. It's our first workshop here. So it's the fiction workshop, which means we'll be writing a short story. And then the idea with the workshop is that you'll find yourself in a group here in Unit 5. I'll show you that in a second. You are posting your short story in the discussion board as a file by Thursday, Feb 11, and then you are providing feedback to everybody who's posted on time that's in your group, of course not everybody in the class, by Thursday, Feb 18th. And you'll notice that that's a long turnaround, like a whole week for us. But you'll sort of see why in a second here. So there's a couple of things that you want to think about or that I'll try to mention here. It's important to maybe review the rules of creative writing, just so you have those kind of in the back of your mind. And they're in many ways easy to conceptualize as these abstract ideas, but then how do you actually put them into practice as you're working on your short story? You definitely want to look at a couple of pieces of our course that we haven't kind of addressed yet, how the workshops work. So there's a description here of kind of what I just described, the double due date system where you're posting your work, then you're providing feedback. A good portion of the grading is based not on how amazing your short story is, but just on really basic stuff like did you post in an accessible format, like an actual file, and did you post on time? So the bar is pretty low as far as that goes. Okay, let me go back here. So the how to post piece is not really new for us since we've done that in a couple of different venues so far, and I'll walk you through basically this stuff in Unit 5 again. You're posting a file, remember? Okay, the how to provide feedback. This is really, really important. Again, the kind of anchor, the core of what we're doing here. So in the workshop, the golden rule applies. You can't expect to get great feedback from other people, but not really put forth much effort in giving feedback. That's why there's a whole week turnaround between the posting due date when you've posted and everyone's posted their story and when you are providing feedback. And so you are not just typing like something in the discussion board, like a sort of paragraph or a summative thing that ties it all together. You are actually opening up the file and using one of a couple different methods. You can do the actual commenting feature using Word or whatever word processing program that you use. And then, of course, the idea is that once you do that with someone's story, you post it back to the discussion board. So each person in the group of 4 or 5 or whatever the numbers actually are, you'll be getting 4 or 5 of your story back, but with comments from each of your group members. And notice again, it's not just 1 or 2 comments, it's pretty consistently throughout. It's about sentence level things, it's about little passages, you know, it's really, and these are just obviously examples. I don't expect you to be able to read these, but just to see how busy the commenting is and how kind of intense it is. You could also, if you don't like this kind of marginal system, you could just do some comments like using square brackets like I show in this example. But it's important that you make it fairly obvious for the person who's getting the file back to find the comments. So you don't want to bury them in such a way that it's possible for the person to just miss half of them because they don't really stand out. They're not set off. You can literally use the highlighting feature, you know, whatever you want to do. But again, it's really important that you're commenting in the file. You're providing that file back with comments throughout. Not just a sort of I like this or I didn't like that or something at the end saying this was a great story. That can be nice to hear, and you can certainly do that, but that's not what's generating your grade for this assignment. It's comments throughout that are really meaningful. And so that's kind of like what is discussed down here. There's some prompts to get you thinking about, you know, what are your expectations? What's your take on the work? What are some techniques or moments that you like or maybe would suggest a change to? Are there sort of some mechanical things, whether it's stylistic or just basic typo grammar things that you think need to be taken care of? All of that stuff you want to point to. And one of the most important things is that you're not just really providing your opinion, although it sort of starts there. So I like this or I wondered about, that's a good place to start, but it's not the end. You want to provide the why. Like, I really like this because the word choice seemed to be consistent throughout, or the dialogue between these characters seemed a little bit artificial because they spoke in complete sentences with no contractions and no repetition, or something like that. So you're providing, again, that real sort of specific level of feedback. And truthfully, I feel like the workshop, sort of counterintuitively, it seems like it would be great to do face-to-face, and it works pretty well that way. But it's actually really good this way because you're forced to deal just with the text. You have to give the person back their actual story with you intervening at really specific moments. So you as the writer are getting some really, really good feedback, if everyone does it correctly, about things that you might want to change or review, or strengths that are coming through in your writing. The other nice thing is that you're not just getting one person's feedback, you're getting multiple people to read your story. So one person might love the title and 4 people said, oh, it sounded a bit cliche. Then that's a good indication that maybe it's something that you want to revisit. If just one person gave you an opinion, then you're sort of like, well, okay, that's one opinion, I wonder what someone else would say. So this format is really nice because you're getting multiple viewpoints on your story. And of course, as we move through the course, we'll do different genres. So we start with a short story, but we'll also do a poetry workshop and a creative nonfiction workshop. So we'll do this a number of different times. Okay, so again, it's really important then that you walk yourself through all the stuff about how the workshops work. The grading that you'll see again is really not about your ability to write a fantastic short story. It's much more, is there evidence that you've invested some energy? And then of course you are posting on time and in the right format. So I've tried to avoid putting myself in the situation of grading your writing directly. And that works for you and for me, because the point of a workshop is not to take a short story that you think is completely finished and you're really kind of unwilling to make any changes to it. So you get all this feedback, people have like generously invested their time, but you feel like it's done, so you're sort of resistant to making any changes. So why would you submit something like that? So the flip side of that is that I think it's just understood that you're submitting a piece that is still in kind of mid-draft form. So it's not just something that you dashed off the night before and just has kind of a beginning but nothing else, and then you're asking people to fill in the blanks. So that's too little. But we also don't need this perfected short story you've been working on for years, because then you're like, what would we do with that? Say, okay, but if you're not open to making changes, then there's really nowhere to go with it. So it's really nice from the writer's perspective, so you don't feel obliged to have to produce this great, amazing short story that has absolutely no errors or no weaknesses or anything, because your grade depends on it, because it really doesn't. In fact, one of the things that, that I invite people to do, and I'll go into our unit here, is when you post your file in the discussion board, obviously you're attaching the file itself for people to grab, but one of the things that you certainly could do, and you'll see the groups here, the discussion board here at the bottom, so you'll just find your way into a group. I'll just go into this one, for example. So you'll just reply to me, my empty post, just to get the thread started. So what you could do then is wait patiently. So you're going to attach your file, of course we know that. And if there were certain things that you knew you wanted to work on, like I really am interested in what people thought of the ending, or this one character, or the climactic moment of the story. Do you think it's too much? Do you think it's not enough? If you wanted to provide some text in here where you're asking your group some questions, you could definitely do that. You don't have to by any means. But the point is that nobody's expecting you to not have places in the story that you'd still want to work. So it truly is a draft, and that's okay. Again, it can't be just like the night before kind of nothing stuff, but it doesn't need to be this perfect, pristine piece of literature, right? That's not what we're going for. Okay, so back into the unit then. So it's really important, of course, to understand the due date system, understand the expectations and kind of how we're doing things, and then, of course, to understand how, and this walks you through all of the stuff that I just showed you. Buttons look a little bit different. Blackboard changes the layout, but you'll get the idea, I think. To really understand the feedback portion. So truthfully, the benefit here is doing the feedback part, not so much you writing this perfect short story. And you'll see there's very little guidelines. There's sort of a length requirement. Again, more artificial than anything, just to keep people from maybe posting too much, which gets a little bit hard to read. You can certainly get some feedback from people that you might know, but again, the purpose of the workshop is to get that feedback. We do want to see, right, some of the strategies that we've covered, whether from our textbook readings, from other writers that we've read, from those rules of creative writing kind of a thing being applied, focusing across the board, so not just an event-based kind of a thing, which is what most of our blockbuster movies are these days. But we want to think about character development, and of course that happens through dialogue. Good description, that doesn't mean lots and lots of description, it means well-chosen description. Issues of pacing, often I'll read stories that begin almost like every kind of minute is described, and then all of a sudden that stretches out, and 5 years later things unfold, and then we're back to this minute, kind of minute-by-minute narration. And so it's really jarring to read. It's like the pacing doesn't work very well. And again, you're getting some great feedback, so it's a good opportunity for you to get some idea from a group of writers, not just one, what your strengths are, but also areas that you might want to improve. Okay? So if you have any questions, by all means be in touch, and I'm going to show you those due dates one last time. Because we have this 2, right? The 2 for Unit 5. You're posting your work as a file by Thursday, Feb 11, and then you're providing feedback to everybody in your group who's posted on time and in an accessible file by Thursday. And again, you're posting back to the discussion board the file that you've marked up. It can't just be one big comment or just like 1 or 2 little marginal things throughout. There really has to be, like, I have to see your investment in looking at that work and trying to provide some idea of both some strengths, but also some areas for improvement. All right, so as always, if you have any questions, be in touch with me, and I look forward to reading everybody's short stories.